Without you, I'd be home reading my poetry to my two poodles. One remains, the other one walks away. The one that remains is 15 and deaf. Anyway, poetry, I guess I gotta do that. Can't stall anymore. First poem is in recognition of Haiti. I can't think of a place in the Western Hemisphere that's been victimized as much as Haiti ever since the revolution. So, in recognition of Haiti, high places. When Haiti stopped shaking, the Archbishop was crushed at his desk. Even the President was homeless. From a mountain of rubble, two vertical legs protruded like the entry of a dive from an invisible board. A little farther up, a man stiff as a mannequin reached up to a distracted guy. When my son's school fell on him, I wanted a spot from which to jump. However, there were no high places left. This is just in thinking of all the sexual trafficking that exists all over the world, and not too many cities in the United States are more heavily sexually trafficked than Atlantic City. It might come as a surprise, but we make the top 10 here for our size. I mean, it's a small city, I guess around 40,000, but we compete with Detroit and the big, largest cities in the country. So, Leela, since my wife and I are not especially attractive, I do not know from where my daughter's great beauty comes. I think it is God's curse. Because she is being stalked by kidnappers, Leela can no longer work in the rice fields or attend school. People always offer a job as a waitress or maid, but I know they will take her to a brothel in Bangkok. The fat lady with the black teeth became angry when I spat at her dirty money, saying she would be back. This morning I woke up and thought she had been snatched, but she was outside sleeping. I will not be able to watch her forever. This was what I was thinking right before I scarred her face with acid. It's very short, 9 syllables, I think, so I'm just preparing you so you don't think any more verses are coming. Malala. I like saying that. Malala. It's a beautiful name. Shot in her face, turns the other cheek. (1943). Staring straight ahead, eyes nailed to the pavement, as though with her vision constructing a bridge over a canyon in hell, she walked to the cafe. To be a Jew in occupied Paris was to live on borrowed time. This meant your breath, heartbeat, and everything you saw or said was only loaned to you, and at any moment could be reclaimed like a small wave falling back to the sea. Even before I could present her black 2 sugars, she had already completed a paragraph in her book. Although her smile was enough, she paid with 3 coins, letting delicate fingers linger for a count of 2. Surprised, I retreated behind the counter, kneeled and kissed my palm. As usual, she wrote for exactly 1 hour, stole a glance over her shoulder and left. I told my mother I was in love with a Jewish girl with whom I had never spoken. She said to forget her, for she was dead, a ghost who could only haunt me. One day, 2 stormtroopers entered as she was writing. Feeling the coldness of her sweat, I noticed her slip out the door as they ordered breakfast. While clearing tables, I saw her diary on the floor and realized it would have betrayed her identity. Although tempted many times to trespass on her privacy, it remained a mystery long after liberation. One afternoon, many years later, I sat down with the only evidence of my unrequited love. For the rest of the day, I was in her skin, reliving tearfully the fear of her daily existence. Then, to my surprise, I came to a page containing a pale and desiccated, yet still exquisite orchid. The date of the last entry was as familiar as this morning, and it concluded with, Today I touched his hand. I'll continue in a romantic vein for one more. Spider-Man. If I were a spider, I would crawl into your bedroom, secreting myself in some hidden place with a panoramic view. Like a circus act, down I'd rappel after your eyes closed, then crawl through your open diary, intoxicating myself with your verbs. Over your framed picture, begging for it to whisper, to your closet, caressing fibers familiar with your body. Spying your cello in the corner, I glide a glissando of a moan my mouth is incapable of making. Raising only every other leg, I would begin an intimate journey, tiptoeing across your body. Mid-thigh, I would tremble, thinking of when I was a man. Finally, I'd web you in silk, 8 eyes awake, intercepting nightmare's first vibrations. At morning's light, I would be back in position, eavesdropping conversations. I would come to know your real face, the one you have when you close your door, the one beneath your makeup, the one you cry with. I wasn't going to read this poem because I think I read it a couple months ago. However, I was listening to a snatch of a conversation between Tavis Smiley and Dick Gregory. Is everybody here familiar with Dick Gregory? Okay, so Tavis Smiley says to Dick Gregory, well, Martin Luther King was the greatest greatest person that America's ever produced. And Tavis Smiley said, no, he just dismissed it. And Dick Gregory just dismissed it. And Tavis Smiley said, how can you dismiss that? Because you marched with Martin Luther King. He said, if he wasn't the greatest American, who was? And without blinking, Dick Gregory said, John Brown. So this is for John Brown. Angel from Harper's Ferry. On December 2nd, 1859, my neck snapped, and I pendulumed in the Charlestown sun, swinging peacefully as the breeze whispered a divine mission. Many would find that ironic with Kansas blood still dripping, but I was always God-guided. Now a spirit, I am in a cell, not unlike the one I vacated in Virginia 109 years ago. On a bunk bed sleeps a small black man. A century of history flashes between us. It seems shortly after my death, America went to war as I did over the same sin, slavery, and 600,000 died. While the prisoner slept, I fed him dreams in preparation for our visit. Gently, I commanded him, awake. First, we talked about working for a similar cause with dissimilar means. He wanted to know about Frederick Douglass. I told him I hid out at his house for 3 weeks and that they were two of a kind. Same sharp intellect, same resolution. He told me local clergymen were warning him to slow down and wondered if he was moving too quickly. I said if God wanted him to be more moderate, the last one he would have sent would be John Brown. Martin laughed so hard a guard came, but all he saw was my new friend. I love seeing him relax. He said, before you go, one question. How do you plan projects not knowing when you were going to die? I said, Martin, no one knows that, but your case is an exception. You have 4 years and 12 days. Then he took out a pen and wrote his letter from a Birmingham jail. JC with John Coltrane, and I'll dedicate this to Dave and Ernie and Doug, all the jazz lovers in the room, and Bruce. JC, with all the wars wounding earth and its people, all Jesus was in the mood for was the music of John Coltrane. Slipping the CD back in its sleeve, he invited him over for dinner and libations. When he arrived, he said, you know, it's more than coincidence. We have the same initials. An hour later, Jesus requested the Love Supreme because it reminded him of his father. The thrall, though near perfect in the world, now was divinely different, simultaneously subtle yet intense, at first suggestive of a pattering of raindrops on dry leaves, before dissipating as fine mist over a meadow. Jesus wiped a tear from his eye and said, John, there is something I've always meant to ask you. Please ask. When you were in the flesh, why did you never speak to me in prayer? Putting his saxophone down, John looked at Jesus and said, I did every time I played. This piece I wrote to champion the rights of gays, and which is just to be treated like everybody else. I mean, it's not that big. It shouldn't be that big a deal, but it seems like it is in this country and other countries. It's much worse. Refugees. Everybody needs a home. That's why hearts bleed for refugees, displaced by inhumanity of man or God. Funny how we only call God God when he does something good. Otherwise we say nature. Be it wars and ethnic cleansing or fires and floods, broken is still broken, dead is still dead. Tom Petty sang, you don't have to live like a refugee. Tell that to victims of Katrina. Tell that to gays who cannot return unless they live a lie. Is a lie a life? Grew up in the mindless masculinity of black urbanity. Faggot was a whip word for the sentimental or the effeminate who were seen as caricatures. I sobered when Shannon, my neighbor, came out and was put out in the street like tomorrow's trash. They say God doesn't put any more on you than you can bear. Well, he does, and sometimes it's called religion. Thousands of black Abrahams bring daggers down on young Isaacs, be they boys or girls, using Jesus like AK-47s. Perhaps God blinded them with pinches of salt from Lot's wife. Ironically, others are quicker to recognize their civil and moral rights. At 5 a.m., attic rustling awakened my wife and me. Inching up the ladder, the nervous beam revealed small creatures hanging inverted like little St. Peter's who thought himself unworthy of a Christly position, crucifixion. The Batman arrived, attaching soft fabric to PVC piping as the only exit, making re-entry impossible. The following morning, I saw two flying erratically in unbird-like patterns. Though blind, they must have felt panicked in the bright sky. No veil of blackness shielding them from hawks and other predators. Tiny, tiring wings made pass after hopeless pass at my rooftop, wondering what happened to the mouth of their cave. Lifted. Locking the back door out onto the deck, past my granddaughter's bubbles to my car. Every day I go to the store. When I come home, the procedure is reversed. Since I'm retired, I don't have too many other places to go. The first time, she dipped the wand and translated her breath into transparent spheres. Her eyes were wide as quarters. Her jaw dropped and head tilted back, following their flight. Though she needed no supervision, sometimes I stood beside her, and sometimes pulled the curtain watching from the window. The container has been lonely for 15 months because Sydney has moved to Florida with her mom and dad. I dip the wand in and blow at least 20 bubbles, rainbow circles of hollow sky. After 3 more times, I realize I am crying, leaking drops right into the container. One more time I blow just to watch my flying tears.